I heard them before I saw them. Mark's voice, light smug, floated in from the living room. She'll cry. Women always do. Jake chuckled. $10 says she runs out in tears. They didn't know I was in the hallway holding a tray of drinks. Feet frozen, breath halted, pulse roaring in my ears. They were betting on my pain, on my breakdown, on my silence. 5 days before Christmas, Jake's voice again. She's predictable. Mark laughed. She'll crumble. I didn't drop the tray. I didn't make a sound. I walked into the room smiling. Drinks anyone? They smiled back. Still so sure, still so stupid, because they didn't know I wasn't the woman they remembered, and this wasn't their game anymore. It always started with laughter. Mark would smile at dinner parties, glass in hand. You know I could leave you tomorrow, right? Everyone laughed. So did I. But inside, something twisted, like a rubber band stretched too tight. Nobody heard the weight behind the joke. They didn't notice how often he said it. Once a month, then once a week, then just casually, like a reflex. They saw a charming husband. I saw a warning wrapped in a smirk. I stopped wearing my red dress. He once scoffed. Trying too hard, aren't we? I never wore it again. At restaurants, I studied his tone before I spoke. I waited for the shift, the moment my sentence became his punchline. He never yelled. He didn't need to. His words sliced clean, dipped in charm. I smiled. That was the first thing I learned, smile, even when it cuts. I stopped posting on social media. Too risky, he might say. I was attention-seeking. I skipped book club, ignored calls from my sister. My world got smaller, quieter. Everything began to orbit Mark. His moods set the tone. His silence meant I had done something wrong, even if I didn't know what. When my mom visited, he criticized the kitchen loudly. When I forgot the dry cleaning, he muttered useless. Just low enough for me to hear, just soft enough to deny. I told myself this was marriage. Maybe not a fairy tale, but stable. At least he wasn't cheating. At least he wasn't violent. At least. But at least is a dangerous phrase. It's the language of survival, of slow erasure. And I was disappearing piece by piece. No bruises, no screaming, just silence and control dressed as routine. It happened at the gala. 2 glasses of champagne in. Mark leaned close, eyes glossy. You're just like the rest, he muttered. Clingy, always needing more. My throat tightened. My smile froze. I didn't ask what he meant. I'd stopped asking a long time ago. When we got home, he slammed the door, went straight to the liquor cabinet. I followed, calm, measured. I poured his drink, handed it to him with a soft smile, the kind I'd perfected. You always joke about leaving, I said. Maybe we should sign something, just in case. He laughed loud, careless. You think I need a prenup for my fantasy football winnings? He scribbled his name on a napkin, then passed out on the couch. He forgot. I didn't. By morning, Mark didn't remember the napkin. But I did. I folded it carefully, tucked it into a manila folder labeled Tax Receipts 2020, then called Rachel. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a pen. We sat in silence as the notary stamped it. The paper felt heavier in my hands than it looked. I scanned a copy, emailed it to the private account Rachel had made for me years ago, just in case. That night, I made dinner like nothing had changed. I asked Mark about his day, laughed at his jokes, wiped the counters while he scrolled through his phone. He didn't notice the difference, but I had changed. I no longer flinched. I calculated. For the first time in years, I had something solid. In the weeks that followed, something shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. I began watching him like a stranger, not with fear, with focus. I started a journal. Not the cute kind with quotes on the cover. A plain, spiral-bound notebook tucked under my side of the mattress. Every night I logged what he said. His tone, the time he came home 1:15 a.m. reeking of perfume and tequila. I didn't confront him, didn't cry, just wrote it down, documented it. It wasn't a plan, not yet. It was a habit, a ritual, a way to stay grounded in truth. He thought I was softening. He didn't know I was sharpening. It was his company's New Year kickoff party. Crowded room, loud music, fake smiles everywhere. Mark raised his glass and laughed. My wife's hobby is overspending. People chuckled. I didn't. I excused myself to the restroom, stared at my reflection under harsh fluorescent lights, face blank, stomach tight. He wanted a reaction. He wanted embarrassment. I gave him silence. In the mirror, I whispered, he thinks I'm breakable. And maybe I was, but not tonight. When we got home, he didn't mention what he said. Neither did I. I just wrote it down. Date, time, quote. It wasn't pain anymore. It was evidence. I wasn't collecting feelings. I was collecting leverage. I was folding laundry when it fell out. A small receipt from his jeans pocket, 2 wine glasses, 1 hotel room, room service, strawberries, champagne. Dated February 14th, Valentine's Day. We'd spent it apart. He claimed he was out of town for work. I didn't confront him. Didn't even pause. I scanned it, filed it, logged it in the journal with a small red mark. It was no longer about trust or betrayal. It was about patterns, truth over reaction, proof over emotion. I made dinner that night like usual, asked about his meetings, laughed when he mocked a coworker, but in my mind, another line was drawn, another quiet box checked. Over dinner, he poured another glass of wine, smiled without warmth. If we ever split, you'd crawl back, he said. You can't even fix the Wi-Fi without me. I nodded. That's true, I said gently. No sarcasm, just softness. He grinned, thinking he'd won again. That I believed him, that I still needed him. I cleared the plates, wiped the counter. He went back to scrolling. But I didn't forget that line. I underlined it in my journal, noted the way he looked at me like property, not a person. He thought I agreed out of weakness, but it was strategy. I was disarming the weapon by pretending not to see it. Inside, I was silent steel. Outside, I was calm water, still, but watching, always. There's a silence that settles in certain homes. Not peaceful, not gentle. Tight like a wire pulled too far. Every room echoed with things we didn't say. Every smile I gave came with a knot in my chest. We weren't talking, we were performing. He thought silence meant control, but I knew better. It meant distance. A distance I was no longer afraid of. Even footsteps felt different, measured, predictable. I walked lightly. He stomped carelessly. He still thought the house belonged to him. I started counting days instead of doubts. Tracking moments, not feelings. There was no explosion, no screaming match, just slow growing tension, invisible to others, undeniable to me. The foundation wasn't cracking, it had already cracked. Now I was watching where to place my feet before the whole thing gave way. It was just a dream. His voice, sharp cold, echoed through it. You'll have nothing, he said, not yelling, just final. I jolted awake. Sheets tangled, heart racing, sweat cold down my spine. I sat up in the dark, looked around the room we shared. Same furniture, same silence. But something was different, not out there, in me. A quiet whisper rose from somewhere deep. That's not true anymore. I had the document. I had the timeline. I had time. That night, I stopped pretending. I stopped shrinking. I stopped hoping he'd change. I wasn't his wife anymore. Not in my mind. Not in my spirit. From that point on, I was his shadow. Polite, polished, and watching, always watching. He thought the napkin was a joke. A drunken laugh. A scribble between sips of whiskey. But to me, it was a contract. A start. A quiet blade in my pocket. I met Rachel in her office. Fluorescent lights buzzing, walls lined with legal books, truth humming in the air. She read the napkin slowly. No pressure? He signed willingly. I nodded. Rachel exhaled. He handed you the knife, she said. Now you're just choosing when to use it. We reinforced it. Added clarity. Defined every clause. Spousal protection. Asset division. No coercion. No wiggle room. I left her office with a flash drive, a printed copy, and a plan I never had to say out loud. At home that night, I served dinner with a smile. Mark never noticed I'd already filed the first piece of freedom. I became the wife he bragged about. Polished, pleasant, quick with a compliment, slower with opinion. He made jokes about my spending. I laughed. He belittled my taste. I agreed. To him, I looked soft again. Tamed. That was the point. When he talked about his promotion, I toasted him with sparkling eyes. He didn't know his supervisor just wanted him gone. He stopped being careful, stopped hiding things, left his phone unlocked, wallet open, luggage packed carelessly for business trips. He thought I had surrendered, that I'd deflated into the shell he shaped. But I wasn't shrinking, I was collecting. Every word, every receipt, every night he didn't come home, he relaxed, and I took note. Because performance wasn't submission, it was strategy dressed in a smile. He left for the gym one evening. 10 minutes later, I opened our shared laptop, clicked once, synced his phone to my cloud folder. No password, no suspicion. Messages appeared like clockwork. Hotel confirmations, unlabeled numbers. Late night miss you texts. I didn't cry, didn't shake. I just forwarded them all to the private email Rachel set up. Labeled, time-stamped, stored. One message stood out. Tonight, same hotel. She suspects nothing. He was wrong. I suspected everything. I simply chose silence over confrontation. That night, I made his favorite meal, lasagna. Garlic bread, warmed plates. He walked in sweaty, smiling. "I'm starving," he said. "I know," I replied. He devoured it, said it was the best he'd had in weeks. I smiled across the table, not because I forgave him, because I knew appetite makes men careless. It was a barbecue. Jake stood near the grill, beer in hand, voice loud. "She'll fall apart if you leave her," he laughed. "Too dependent. You've got it made, man." I was 5 feet away, arranging a fruit tray, carefully placing strawberries in a spiral, one slice at a time. I didn't flinch, didn't blink. Mark joined me seconds later, wrapped an arm around my waist, pressed a kiss to my cheek. "You look beautiful today," he said. "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied. The smile I gave him wasn't fake. It just wasn't for him. It was for the plan, for the timeline, for the future I was quietly building. They thought I didn't hear, but I heard everything. And I didn't need confrontation. I needed confirmation. And now I had both. The next day I started recording. Not everything, just the calls that mattered. The slip-ups, the laughter that came too easily after something cruel was said. I labeled each file by date, stored them on a separate drive, hidden behind old photo folders. It felt strange at first spying in my own home, but this wasn't paranoia, it was protection. He once said, "If you were smarter, you'd know when to shut up." I smiled and poured his wine. Later I pressed record and said nothing. There was power in silence, in letting him talk. The more he underestimated me, the more he revealed. This wasn't revenge, not yet. I was just building the parachute for when it was time to jump. I bought a new planner. Simple, gray cover, no quotes. To anyone else, it looked like grocery lists, meal plans, chores. But inside, I built a map, an X for nights he came home late, a dot for every lie I could prove, a star for suspicious charges, a small triangle for each time he said, "You're lucky I'm still here." It looked neat, almost boring, but it was a story written in ink only I could read. I kept it in the kitchen drawer beside pens and coupons, harmless unnoticed. Some people journal feelings. I tracked patterns, not because I was paranoid, but because I was preparing. One day this wouldn't be just paper, it would be proof. Proof that I didn't imagine it. Proof that I survived it with strategy. Eventually, I stopped reacting at all. No flinching, no raised eyebrows, just nods, just smiles. Mark saw what he wanted to see, a wife who had settled, softened. No more resistance, no more fire. So he grew bolder, left cash out without explanation, took trips without fake agendas, stopped hiding messages from women saved as M. One night I found a lipstick receipt, shade Temptress red. I didn't wear lipstick anymore. I didn't confront him, didn't even sigh, just made a note. Logged the date, stapled the receipt in the back of my planner. I wasn't waiting for him to confess. I was waiting for him to relax enough to hand me everything I needed. Because a man like Mark always thinks he's in control until he's already lost it. 2 weeks before Christmas, he fell asleep drunk on the couch. His phone buzzed, unlocked, screen lit. I glanced down. A message thread opened. She doesn't suspect a thing. "I'll file on Christmas. Want front row seats?" Attached was a gif, a woman crying into a tissue. Jake responded with laughing emojis. I didn't tremble. Didn't feel sick. I read it twice. Took screenshots, emailed them to the vault, then deleted the thread from the phone. That night, I lay beside him in silence, his breath uneven snoring, mine steady calm. He thought he was staging my downfall, that I'd break like glass. But I'd already chosen the date, the place, the people. He wasn't planning a surprise. He was walking straight into mine. And the countdown, it had already started. The house looked perfect. Garland on the banisters, candles in the windows, cinnamon simmering on the stove. I polished the silver, folded the napkins just right. Hung his sweater, the maroon one with reindeer, by the closet door. He loved how it fit. I hated the man inside it. I confirmed the guest list. His parents, my sister Beth, Jake. I rehearsed my lines in silence, practiced my smile in the mirror, not too proud, not too soft. Everything would feel warm, familiar, a beautiful illusion. He wanted drama. He'd planned it like a show. He was expecting tears. But I wasn't staging heartbreak. I was staging truth. The difference, he wanted power. I wanted peace. And peace takes preparation. Christmas Eve arrived with fake cheer. Laughter echoed. Wine poured. The fireplace crackled like a stage light warming up. Beth brought her spiced cider. Jake joked too loud, already tipsy. Mark floated through the room glowing. He loved an audience. He wore the sweater I laid out, reindeer and all, grinned like he was the star of something big. I played the part too, refilled glasses, passed hors d'oeuvres, smiled at stories I'd heard 10 times. Inside, I felt nothing. Not numb, just focused. Mark caught my eye as he carved the turkey, winked, like we were in on the same joke. I smiled back, because he still believed this was his show, still believed I hadn't read the script. But I had. And in a few minutes, I'd be the one directing the final scene. Plates were half empty. Laughter, soft wine warm. Beth's cheeks were flushed from cider. Jake leaned back smirking. Then Mark tapped his glass. The room hushed. His voice rose, smooth, performative. Before dessert, he said, "I have something special for my lovely wife." He reached into his blazer, pulled out a plain white envelope. No bow, no card, just paper. Cold, intentional. He walked around the table, placed it in front of me with both hands. "Merry Christmas, babe," he said. His smile was wide, confident, rehearsed. Jake chuckled under his breath. I looked at the envelope. Didn't touch it right away. The table leaned in, expecting a necklace, a love letter, a warm gesture. I already knew what was inside, and I wasn't scared, because while he was preparing for drama, I had prepared for the truth. I picked up the envelope, slid a finger under the flap. Calm, slow, like opening a dinner menu, inside just as expected. Petition for dissolution of marriage, already signed, already filed. He'd even highlighted a section, like a child showing off homework. The room was silent. Beth froze. Mark beamed, waiting. I looked at him, then back at the paper, and smiled. I reached into my clutch, pulled out a silver pen, clicked it once, signed in one clean motion, no hesitation, no flinch. Dated it, capped the pen, slid it back across the table. "Thank you," I said. Soft, almost sweet. Mark blinked. Once, twice. "This is it?" he asked, voice too casual. "That's it," I said. And for the first time all night, he didn't know what to do next. He was still processing, still smiling almost, still pretending to lead. I reached under the table, lifted a small gold-wrapped box, set it gently in front of him. "What's this?" he asked, brows tightening. "Your real gift," I said. He peeled the paper slowly, confused, nervous, revealing a sleek leather folder. He opened it, read the first line, paused. His face changed, eyes scanning, lips moving, recognition hitting like cold water. Inside the prenup, dated, notarized, filed, upgraded, reinforced, every clause legally binding, signed by his own hand. Jake leaned closer. "What is that?" Mark didn't answer. So I did. "It's the agreement Mark signed last January, updated for clarity, filed under his terms, and now mine." He looked pale, speechless, and for once out of moves. Mark sat frozen still, gripping the folder, his mouth open then closed. I reached into my purse again, pulled out a thin square envelope, plain, no label, set it beside his plate. "One last thing," I said. He stared at it wary now, fingertips slow. He opened it like it might explode. Inside a sonogram photo, black and white, 8 weeks along. He looked at it, then at me, then back down again. "I'm pregnant," I said. Calm, even, his expression cracked, just a flicker. A smile tried to form, then vanished. Prenup, custody, assets. He was doing the math in real time. "You planned this," he whispered. I met his eyes. "You bet I'd cry. You called me predictable." I leaned in. So no, Mark, I didn't plan this. I prepared. The room went still. No gasps, no outrage, just silence, thick and waiting. Mark stared at the sonogram, at the prenup, at me. Beth's hand found mine under the table, warm, steady. Her thumb brushed over my knuckles. Jake shifted in his seat, tried to speak, then didn't. Mark's mother pressed her lips tight. Her pearls trembled against her throat. No one touched their forks. No one reached for dessert. Mark looked around, eyes scanning for someone to save him. A joke, a lifeline, anything. There was none. You think you've won, he said, his voice too low, too late. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. I stood calm, started gathering the untouched plates. Behind me he sat surrounded by truth he never thought would speak for itself. I stacked the empty dinner plates, moved slowly, carefully, like this was any other night. The tension didn't break, it thickened. Mark still hadn't moved. His hands rested near the sonogram, unsure what to touch. I looked around the table. Everyone was staring, some at him, most at me. Beth's husband cleared his throat, then stopped. I walked to the sideboard, lifted the dessert tray. Apple pie or pecan? I asked. Voice light, almost cheerful. No one answered, not at first. Then Beth stood. I'll help, she said quietly, and followed me to the kitchen. Behind us, the weight of Mark's silence settled over the room like snowfall. No yelling, no slammed doors, just the sound of plates being rinsed and a man realizing the room no longer belonged to him. Part 28, one word. I returned to the table with pie in hand, set it down gently. Pecan, his favorite. He didn't touch it. Mark looked up finally, eyes searching desperate now, voice cracking just slightly. Steph, he said. A pause. You don't have to do this. I met his gaze. Steady, calm, lifted my wine glass, not blinking. Oh, I said, but I'm not doing anything. You already did. He sat back stunned, like the words slapped harder than any scream ever could. His parents stayed silent. Jake stared at the ceiling. Beth poured herself more wine finally. Mark opened his mouth again, but nothing came out. Sometimes the deepest cut isn't a scream. It's a quiet sentence. Unshaken. Undeniable. And all I gave him was one word. His phone buzzed on the table. Once. Then again. Then a third time. He grabbed it like a lifeline. Unlocked it with a shaky thumb, stared. The color drained from his face. First email, subject prenup, confirmation, legally binding from Rachel's law firm, every clause, every timestamp, attached, neatly organized. His thumb scrolled faster, lips parted, breath shallow. Second buzz, another email. This time forwarded from his own father's account. Subject FYI. Signed documents from Stephanie's counsel. Even his father had seen the truth before Mark did. He lowered the phone slowly, like it had burned him, like the truth had become physical. Jake leaned over. You okay, man? Mark didn't answer. Couldn't. Because this wasn't just a signature. It was the mirror. And finally, he saw himself in it. I turned to Beth. I could go for something sweet, I said. She nodded quickly, eyes still wide. Apple or pecan apple? With whipped cream, please. My voice didn't shake. It floated soft, grounded, free. I stepped to the buffet, lifted a clean plate. The room was quiet behind me. Only the fireplace crackled. Mark's eyes followed every move, still holding his phone, still reading the documents like they might rewrite themselves. I returned to my seat, sat beside Beth, placed the slice gently on the table, took a bite. The crust flaked perfectly. The cinnamon was warm. It tasted like something I'd forgotten, something mine. He didn't speak, didn't move, because for the first time he understood what silence really meant. Not weakness, not surrender. It meant I was finished listening. Mark shoved his chair back. The legs scraped hard against the floor. Everyone flinched except me. You think you've won? He muttered. His voice was flat, empty. I didn't respond, didn't blink, just took another bite of pie. He looked around the table for allies, for sympathy, for someone to look away with him. No one moved. Beth refilled her glass. Jake shifted in his seat. Even his mother stayed still, hands folded tight in her lap. He stood there, jaw tight, chest rising too fast. But no one stopped him, no one followed, and then without another word he turned and walked out, left the prenup, left the sonogram, left the illusion. The door clicked shut, and for the first time in years I didn't feel like something had been taken from me. I felt like something had finally left. Silence lingered like smoke. No one spoke right away, just the faint ticking of the clock, the soft clink of a fork resting on ceramic. Then Beth exhaled. "I always hated that sweater," she muttered. "Someone maybe." Jake laughed low and awkward. Rachel's cousin gave a quiet chuckle. Mark's mother almost smiled, then looked away, embarrassed by it. The room didn't explode. It exhaled, like it had been holding its breath with me for far too long. I leaned into Beth's shoulder. She rested her head against mine. No words, just weight, just warmth. I looked around the room, same people, but suddenly a different air. No fear, no walking on glass, just quiet strength and enough peace to fill the silence. I whispered Merry Christmas. Beth didn't ask. She just stayed, pulled the extra blanket from the closet, tossed her bag into the guest room. "You're not waking up alone tomorrow," she said. That was it. No lecture, no pity. We brushed our teeth in silence, changed into oversized t-shirts like we used to, laughed once, soft, tired. She curled up beside me on the guest bed, close enough to feel safe, far enough to feel respected. Her hand found mine beneath the blanket. She didn't squeeze, just rested it there. In the dark, I realized I'd been holding my breath for years, trying not to be too loud, too emotional, too much. But that night, with December air pressing gently at the windows, I exhaled, and for the first time it felt like it was mine. Morning came quietly, no slamming doors, no heavy footsteps, just light creeping through the blinds. The coffee pot was cold, his keys gone, front door still locked from the inside. He hadn't left a note, not even a text. I made breakfast for myself, scrambled eggs, toast, black coffee. Each bite tasted simple, real. No second guessing my volume, no watching his mood, just me. Just this moment, by 9:00 a.m. I was on the phone with the locksmith. "Emergency or standard?" he asked. I paused, smiled. "Standard," I said, then added, "but make it fast." He came that afternoon. Quiet man, kind eyes, didn't ask questions when I handed him Mark's old keys. "Make sure none of these work anymore," I told him. He nodded once, and just like that, I owned something again. My front door. That evening, I walked into the master bedroom. It still smelled like him. Cologne, cold, expensive. Airtight, like a memory that wouldn't fade. I opened every window, let the December wind rush in. It swept through the curtains like it had waited years to be invited. I stripped the bed. Pillows, sheets, the comforter we never agreed on, bundled them into trash bags, tied them tight. In the closet, I found a small box of old candles. Sandalwood, the kind I used to love. He said they gave him headaches. I lit 3, placed them on the dresser, watched the glow stretch across the walls. The room didn't feel haunted. It felt hollow, ready. This wasn't where we slept anymore. It was where I would rest, where I would rebuild. And from that moment on, no part of it belonged to him. His mail started arriving 3 days later. Thick envelopes, harsh fonts, red stamps. Final notice, past due, immediate action required. I didn't open them, didn't forward, didn't call to explain. I just stacked them neatly on a side table near the door. His corner of forgotten things. Each envelope felt lighter than the silence he used to leave behind. I made tea, read a book, didn't look over my shoulder. No more calculating his reactions. No more tiptoeing through someone else's mess. I had my name back, my space back, and now his chaos could live without me. He created it. He could carry it. For the first time in years, his problems weren't mine to fix, and that somehow felt heavier than revenge. Rachel called that evening. Her voice, light, almost giddy. "You're not going to believe this," she said. Pause. "No, actually you will." I smiled into the phone, curled on the couch, blanket over my legs, tea in hand. "Mark's lawyer called this morning," she continued. "Let's just say his face didn't handle the numbers well. I didn't ask. She told me anyway. He lost 70%. And with the baby coming," she paused for dramatic effect, "he's cutting a check so big he'll need a payment plan." I didn't laugh. I didn't cheer. I just stared out the window. Watch the wind move through the trees. Peace in motion. It's not the money I whispered. Rachel softened. I know, because what I'd gained couldn't be counted. It could only be lived. The fallout came soft, not loud. Like snow melting, not a storm, just quiet shifts. Some friends unfollowed, some stayed silent. A few sent awkward messages full of disclaimers, not taking sides. Just surprised. Others were braver. A woman I hadn't spoken to in 2 years texted, I wish I had your strength. Then the flowers arrived. Pale pink peonies in a simple glass vase. No card, just a folded note. About time. I knew the handwriting. Claire, Mark's former assistant. Of course she knew. They all knew. They just needed someone to go first. The man who once said he trained wives like interns now walked alone in office hallways. His jokes, no one laughed. His confidence haunted. And me, I bought lavender soap again, because finally no one was telling me what too much smelled like. The nursery came together piece by piece, walls painted soft sage green. Not pink, not blue, just peace. I hung string lights around the window. Warm yellow glow. A stuffed giraffe sat in the corner secondhand but loved already. The crib took hours to assemble. Beth helped. We laughed over loose screws and confusing instructions. I refinished the old dresser myself. Sanded, painted. One drawer still stuck a little, but it opened when I needed it to. I bought new sheets, white scattered with gold stars. Folded them with care. One night, while folding baby clothes, I caught myself humming. No music playing, no one listening. Just me in a quiet room that felt like the future. And for the first time in years, I wasn't preparing for escape. I was preparing to stay. Christmas came again. No centerpieces, no performance, just warmth. The dining table was smaller, laughter real this time. Beth's toddler dropped mashed potatoes and yelled, "Oh," like it was magic. My dad carved the turkey. Elena tried and failed to make vegan gravy. Rachel brought homemade bread and zero judgment. Beside my sister's son, a new high chair, white with yellow stars. And inside it, my daughter. She had his eyes, maybe, but the rest, mine. She babbled nonsense like she was giving a speech, tiny fingers waving, tiny joy unshaken. After dinner, I curled into the armchair by the fire. She slept on my chest, breathing soft against my sweater. Everyone drifted into the kitchen. I stayed, held her close, took one long breath. He said I'd be nothing without him, I whispered into her hair. She stirred, and I smiled. Turns out, I'm everything without him. And if her story stayed with you, even for a moment, let me know in the comments. What part hit hardest? What would you have done? And if you believe strength can be quiet and healing can be powerful, subscribe. There's more to come. More stories, more truth, more women who didn't break, they rebuilt.